All right, let's talk about Alaska. It's this enormous, incredible place that's really defined by a fundamental conflict. On one hand, you've got this land of just immense opportunity. And on the other, it's one of the absolute harshest environments on the entire planet. So let's dive right into that paradox, because it's at the heart of everything. Alaska is like this giant treasure chest of economic potential. We're talking fishing, minerals, oil, you name it. But, and this is a huge but, trying to unlock any of that means you have to go head-to-head with extreme cold, permanently frozen ground, and a vast, incredibly fragile wilderness. So, first up, let's look at the promise side of the coin. What are these incredible opportunities that have been drawing people and entire industries to this seriously formidable northern frontier for so long? Well, a lot of it starts right in the water. You see the way the currents mix, they're in the Bering Sea and the Gulf of Alaska. It creates some of the most nutrient-rich, productive fishing grounds in the world. This supports a massive commercial industry built on things like salmon, pollock, and crab. And get this, the scale of this is just staggering. For 1 out of every 10 Alaskans, the fishing industry isn't just another job. It's the absolute economic backbone of their entire community. Think about that for a second. The story of wealth continues when you look beneath the ground. Alaska is basically a geological treasure trove, unbelievably rich in valuable minerals. You have these regions like the Tintina Gold Belt that are major hubs for huge mining operations, bringing in jobs and a ton of investment. And of course, people are also flocking there just to see its raw beauty. Tourism is a booming industry, no doubt. Especially as the summers get a little warmer, it's easier for cruise ships to navigate those stunning coastlines, giving people these incredible views of calving glaciers and tons of wildlife. But the biggest economic earthquake to ever hit the state, that was the discovery of oil up at Prudhoe Bay back in the late 1960s. This one single event completely remade Alaska's economy. I mean, it funded a level of public services and infrastructure that was just unimaginable before. Now, to move all that oil, they had to build this incredible feat of engineering, the 800-mile-long Trans-Alaska Pipeline. It literally snakes its way from the frozen north all the way down to the ice-free port of Valdez in the south. Okay, so that's the opportunity. Now let's flip the coin and talk about the peril. Let's look at how Alaska's environment pushes back with enormous and very, very expensive challenges. The first and most obvious one is the cold. I mean, it is just relentless. With average annual temperatures way below freezing in the north, just surviving, let alone trying to build and maintain anything, is a constant struggle. And all that extreme cold creates this really unique geological feature that pretty much defines a huge part of the state, permafrost. It's exactly what it sounds like, a layer of permanently frozen ground that causes all sorts of unique problems for any kind of development. So here's the problem. When the top layer of this permafrost thaws in the summer, all that water has nowhere to go. This can lead to something called soliflection, where the soggy ground just kind of slides downhill super slowly. And it can create thermocast, which is this landscape of collapsed, marshy ground that makes building anything stable a complete and utter nightmare. And you'd think the problems would stop in the winter, right? Nope. As the ground freezes again, a process called frost heave kicks in. That's where expanding ice in the soil can literally push roads, pipelines, and even the foundations of buildings apart from below. So you've got this huge potential for wealth and this incredibly dangerous environment. And nowhere does that tension come to a head more intensely than in one of the most contentious environmental debates in the entire country, the fight over drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, or ANWR. This really brings us to the core question that drives this whole debate. Is it worth the immense environmental risk to drill for what could be billions of barrels of oil in this vast, protected, and incredibly fragile wilderness? And as you can imagine, the arguments are deeply divided, and people feel very strongly on both sides. Supporters of drilling, they point to really important economic benefits, jobs, tax revenue for schools and hospitals, and of course, greater energy independence for the U.S. But opponents highlight the risk of irreversible damage to a one-of-a-kind ecosystem and the native cultures that depend on it. And for indigenous groups like the Gwich'in, this debate is, well, it's nothing short of existential. Their culture, their food, their traditions, they're all deeply woven into the caribou herds that migrate directly through the area where drilling is proposed. For them, it is not just about the environment, it is about cultural survival. And look, the real-world stakes here are incredibly high. The memory of the 1989 Exxon Valdez disaster just looms over this whole debate. That single accident dumped 11 million gallons of crude oil, completely devastating the coastline and killing hundreds of thousands of animals. It is a very stark reminder of what can go wrong. So, as you can see, the story of Alaska isn't just about cold or oil. It's really about this continuous, high-stakes balancing act between human ambition and the very real limits of nature. The whole state is just defined by these constant trade-offs, right? Economic prosperity versus environmental preservation, industrial development versus indigenous traditions, and the immediate needs of today versus the long-term health of the planet tomorrow. And that really leaves us with a final, critical question that extends way beyond Alaska's borders. In our modern world, with its increasing demand for resources, how do we decide the future of our last great wild places? There are absolutely no easy answers, and in Alaska, that question is being asked every single day.